I'm going to show you how to disassemble and then reassemble this Panasonic Lumix lens unit. This came out of a ZS6 camera, but it's also the same lens unit that's in a ZS7. And I'm pretty sure it's the same one that's in a TZ9 and also a TZ10. Plus, I'm sure some of the procedures I show you will also work on some of the other Lumix cameras. If you haven't already watched the previous video that I did, you'll need to watch the first few minutes of it to see how to tear the camera down to remove this lens unit. You'll only need to watch the first few minutes to get to that point. To find the video, go to my YouTube channel and look for the video that says Repair a Panasonic Lumix ZS6 and ZS7. A handy little trick while watching a video is to press the print screen button on your keyboard when you see something interesting in the video that you want a printed copy of. When you press the print screen button, Windows will place a copy of the image of the screen in the clipboard. Then simply start a program like Windows Paint or any other photo editing program and paste the image in there. Then just print it out. Two items that I use when cleaning a lens unit on a camera is a simple cleaning cloth for smaller areas, and for the larger lenses I like using a cleaning pen. This gets it much cleaner than this cleaning cloth will. What I don't like to use are brushes. I only use these if there's large amounts of sand or dirt in there, but then I clean it after I use this brush. Brushes many times leave a residue behind. If you're going to disassemble your lens unit because you have a dust problem and you've got spots on your pictures, the first thing you're going to want to do, remove this part right here. This is known as the Ccd. This is the part that actually captures the picture from the lens unit, from the optics in there, and transfers it over to the electronics in the camera. There's 3 screws that hold this part down. Okay, with the 3 screws out now, we could just lift the Ccd right off of there. Now this would be the first place you might want to look for dust. This one actually looks pretty clean. And with the Ccd off, we can also look down inside this small square box, and there's a lens in there. Now if you're having a dust problem, this is another place that you can look to see if there's dust collected on it. If so, you can clean that with a cleaning cloth. Okay, the next thing we want to remove is what's called the zoom motor. This is actually what drives your main lens unit in and out as you're zooming. There's 2 screws right here and here that are holding it in. And when you're taking the last screw out, you want to hold your finger underneath the motor just to support it, because it's going to want to drop away as soon as that screw comes out. Once both screws are out, you can just remove the motor. Now you want to be careful because it's still connected to a very small flat ribbon cable. You don't want to pull hard on that at all. Just let it lay to the side. The next thing that we'll remove is a small sensor board that's mounted on the side of the camera housing. There's 1 screw that holds it in. Once you have the screw removed, you can just lift the board away from the camera. Now it's also connected to a very small flat ribbon cable, so you want to be gentle with it and not pull on it very hard. Just let it lay to the side. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is remove 5 screws. There's one here, 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 and here. These screws hold the back cover on. And once we take that off, we'll have access to all of the internal lenses and parts. Okay, with the 5 screws removed now, all we need to do is just lightly lift the back part off. And when you remove it completely, you want to be careful because there is a small flat ribbon cable inside that connects the two halves together. With the back off, we can now see the other side of this lens, which is part of the focus lens. So you can check for dust on here and clean it if you need to. To get to the other lenses and the other parts inside the lens unit, what we need to do is to look for this large gear on the side. This is what the zoom motor was driving. We'll need to turn it a little bit by moving it that way, which would be in a clockwise direction from here. And what we're looking for is, if you look inside these small notches right here, right now you can't see anything. It's just black in there. But as you turn it, as you turn the gear, you'll see 3 posts show up because there's 3 of them here. And when those show up and you can see it, just lightly push the lens unit through there and the outer cover will come off. Once that cover is off, we just need to hold this outer edge here while turning this one counterclockwise, just very slightly. It doesn't take much, and that will come off of there. Okay, the next part that we want to remove is we want to remove the lens unit here that's inside this outer cover here. And to do that, we look on the side and there's 3 posts that are in grooves. Just take one of them, and what we have to do is to move that post up here to where it lines up with that notch. And all 3 of the grooves have that notch, so when you push it just on one, all of them will be lining up at the same time. And once the posts are lined up with that groove, we can do the same thing. Just push on it real lightly and that outer cover will come right off. Next, we're going to remove this sleeve that goes inside this lens unit part. All we have to do is grab this outer edge here and then slightly turn this in a counterclockwise direction and pull on it very lightly, and it'll come off. Now you can see that this actually holds the main front lens on it, and also the protective cover for the lens. And the last part, just pull these apart, same thing, pull it real lightly straight down and it'll come right off. Right now, with that off, all we need to do is just push on the outside edge of this lens on this side very lightly, just so it goes upwards, and that will help you to remove what I believe is part of the image stabilization and the aperture control. You can actually see the aperture part of it right here. Now on this side, this is what I believe is the image stabilization unit. You can see there's a small lens on the inside, and it's mounted on a piece of plastic that's allowed to move around. The plastic is held in place and guided by a couple of pins. Now on the opposite side of this plastic are a couple of magnets and coils, and that's what's used to control the position of it. What we need to do is to locate this pin right here, and it just needs to be pushed that direction just a little bit. Now the way I do that is I take a pair of needle nose pliers and I put it up against the pin on that side, and then put the other side just on the plastic but not touching the other side of the pin. It's just on the plastic. And then just push that pin to where it pops out. It won't come all the way out, it'll just be backed off a little bit. But once it does that, you'll be able to remove this part easily. And with that out, you can clean both sides of the lens that's on there. Well, okay, that gives us access to every lens in the camera, and it gives us access to both sides. So now what we'll do is we'll start cleaning the pieces and putting it back together. The first part that we're going to clean is the unit that we just took off. Clean both sides of it. One side I can get with a pin, the other one I'll use a cloth on, just because it's quite a bit smaller on the other side. And once you clean it, hold it up to the light and look through it. You can see if there's dust on there still. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put this back in where it came from. We just need to take the back part that has the two tabs on it, or little hooks, and that goes over that post. There's also another post that's sticking up that will help keep it in line. Once you have it on there, on the opposite side is another pin that will guide it into position. Then take your pliers, hold the one end of the pliers on this end of the pin, and then just the other side of the pliers just on the plastic, not on the other end of the pin. Just push it till it pops into place, and now it shouldn't come out, but it still can move. Okay, the other part we're going to clean now is the other side of the focus lens. This one I also use a cloth because it's kind of recessed inside that plastic, which makes it a little bit harder for that cleaning pin. Now you want to do both sides, and you want to support this with your finger back here when you're cleaning from this side, because you don't want to dislodge that plastic. And again, hold it up to the light and look through it. You can see if there's dust on there. Okay, with that clean, we'll set it to the side, and we'll start putting the rest of the lens unit together. Okay, on this part, this lens is fairly large, so I'm going to use the pin on this one and clean it. You could also use the cloth. I just like using the pin whenever I can because it seems to clean much better. Now you'll need to support that lens unit with your finger when you're cleaning this side. Alright, good to go. Okay, the first two pieces that we're going to put back together is the lens unit that we just cleaned and this outer sleeve that goes on it. Now at first glance you're going to go, holy smokes, how many different ways are there to put that thing together? There are grooves and there are pins everywhere. Well, there's a trick to it. The trick is to locate the alignment marks that many of the parts have. The alignment mark is a triangle right there. This part has an alignment mark right here, which is incredibly small, but it is a triangle. What you do with this one is you notice there's a groove right next to it, and directly below the alignment mark on this one is a pin. You put that pin in that groove and push them together. And you can test it. You see it works. When you're done, the important part is to make sure that this ring is turned as far counterclockwise as possible. Just like that. What that does is ensures that this alignment mark is directly over the alignment mark on here, which you can't see anymore. Okay, on this part, before we clean it, I'm going to show you one other item that you can clean or fix, whatever you need to do with it. And that is actually the main front cover, or the protective cover. So you can see it, that's what closes when you turn the camera off. A lot of times you'll get dust or dirt inside there and it'll only close halfway or only open halfway. Either case, you can take it off and clean it. Now down inside there's two screws, one there and one there. Once the screws are out, you can just take that front cover right off, and that has the front lens protective cover in it. With that off, you can activate it and clean it so that you can make sure it's working properly. Once you have it all cleaned up, just line this notch with this little pin here, and then put your screws back in. Now with the front cover back on, you can go ahead and clean that lens. I'll clean the front part after it's all back together. Okay, now we'll put these two pieces together. First thing we need to do, relocate our alignment mark, which is right there. There's the triangle. Make sure that this outer ring is turned as far counterclockwise as possible. That ensures that that mark and the mark that's on this sleeve that we can't see anymore are lined up. So just turn it counterclockwise right there, as far as it'll go. Now on this side, this doesn't have an alignment mark, but I'll show you how to do it. What I found is if you use that same alignment groove and pin here and line that up with the alignment mark on there, so that alignment mark is going to be right over that groove that's right in line with that. Once it's over that, all you have to do is just gently push and turn clockwise slightly, and it'll start going all by itself. Just keep going until it goes all the way down over to the next groove, and you'll know it's right because you'll see that the shutter has closed. See, if you back off again, you'll see the shutter opens. Now if for some reason you aligned it incorrectly on here, this is still going to look right. It's going to go down into the bottom of the groove, but the shutter won't close. So if the shutter doesn't close, you know you don't have it right. Alright, the next piece we're going to put on is this sleeve. And that's going to go over the lens unit that we just worked on. What we need to do is locate our alignment mark on this side. There it is right there, just to the left of that groove. And then we relocate our alignment mark on this side, and it is right there, just to the left of that pin. So we take those two, put them together, and drop it in. And then once it goes down, it'll stop, and that's because this pin is keeping it from going down any further. So what we need to do is to take and move that pin over to align with the groove. There's actually 3 pins and 3 grooves, but we'll just push this one over, and once it's over in line with that, that whole unit will fall into place. The next part that we're going to put on is a sleeve that's going to go on the outside of this. But before we put it on there, what we want to do is look down on the inside. There should be a flat ring down there that's just laying in the bottom. I believe this is actually for dust, but if it is, it doesn't work very good. But we still want to make sure that that's in the bottom and laying flat. Now if you don't see it down there, it's possible it's still on the opposite side on this part. If it is, take it off of there and put it in the bottom. Now what we'll do is look for our alignment mark, which is right there on this one. I'll put my thumb by it. And then on here, locate our alignment marks, which are right here. Okay, and with those, I'll insert it, keeping the alignment marks pretty close above and below each other. And it'll go down part way and then stop. So what you have to do is this pin right here, there's actually 3 of them. Take that pin and it needs to be slid over just slightly, and then once it lines up with that groove, it'll pop into place. Now you can actually test the lens just by turning that. Okay, everything looks good. Okay, the next part is the main outer covering. We'll do the same thing. Locate our alignment mark. I'll put my thumb by it again. Locate the mark on this side. Actually, on this one, you can now see the one on the side. Take that one and line it up with the other one, and then push it in. You might have to turn it very slightly clockwise, just very slightly. And once it goes down as far as it'll go, then turn this outer ring to where it lines up with the grooves. And once it's lined up, it'll fall into place, and now you can see the whole unit is flush. Right now we're going to take the back piece that's still connected to this image stabilization unit, and we're going to put this part in the main lens. What we want to do though first is to make sure that this little pocket here, you can see it right there, is on the left side. The reason being is this piece right here, this plastic part, is going to go down inside there once we put the cover on. So to make sure that this part is lined up right, because there's 3 possible ways you could do it, set it in there so that the pins line up in the groove, and when it's sitting there, this flat ribbon cable should be going directly over that pocket. There's only 3 possible ways to do it, so if you got it in one of the wrong positions, it's going to be pretty obvious that it's not right. You know, if the pocket's way over here and there's your flat ribbon cable, okay, it's wrong. So anyway, line it up, put it on there, just let it sit there just so that the grooves and the pins line up. Make sure that that ribbon is going over it. And then what we want to do is just kind of hold it in place, and the gear on this side, what we'll end up doing, just put very little pressure on this piece with your thumb, and then turn this gear, just a very minuscule amount. All you're going to be doing is turning this unit so that the pins line up with the grooves down below. Once they do, that'll go right in there. And that's all you need to do. Okay, with that part in, now we can take the back piece and we can put the piece of plastic that has the flat ribbon cable hooked to it and put it inside that groove, inside that pocket. And that's all it takes. Now we'll just put the 5 screws in there. Alright, next we'll take the focus motor and we'll put it back on. Now we'll put the CCD back on. Before we do though, we'll look again just to make sure that there isn't any dust in there or on the CCD. There's 2 pins on here that will line it up. Just lay it on top, then put the 3 screws in. The last thing we have to put on is a small circuit board that has a sensor on it. Just put it inside, make sure that the little hole lines up, and put the last screw in. Okay, the last thing that we have to do is to take these 2 protective covers that are on the flat ribbon cable. They cover up the solder joints on here, and they're held down by tucking them underneath the metal frame on the CCD. And that's all there is to it. Now we'll take it and we'll put it back in the camera just to make sure it works.